Greetings everyone and welcome to another After Effects tutorial presented by Matronx. This tutorial consists of a step-by-step explanation that goes alongside with the project files that I made accessible on my website. It is totally improvised. I will try to explain it on the go. I didn't make any preparations here because I was eager to show it to you, since I was pretty satisfied with the results. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So as you can see, we have a cover flow effect, iTunes style, much like we see very often. What's really interesting about this project is how it's built. Everything is automated in a way that you can simply import a folder containing thumbnail pictures and automatically in a few steps we'll have them partitioned in the timeline, and to animate all that only 3 keyframes will be required. In fact, the only keyframes used in this project are those you can see right now at the bottom. We'll learn about loops and offsets, which can be very useful. We'll learn a whole bunch of stuff that, well, in fact, you'll see in a few moments. I won't go too deep in details, but I'll show you how to quickly make good use of it. You'll see that everything is pretty simple, and I'm very fond of that. Let's first open the project. Available for download on my website. It's called cs3coverflow.aep. Once you've opened it, you'll notice that it consists of 3 compositions: cover flow, insert sequence here, and cover. You'll need to focus only on the cover flow and the insert sequence here comp. So both comps are opened in the timeline. So what do we have here? Absolutely nothing. For the moment, we have a cover comp here, but it's currently empty. We've got a camera, a light, and a camera controller. Let's import an image sequence. In my case, I'll get to a folder that I called covers. Inside this folder, I've got a multitude of thumbnail images provided by Universal. They're all perfect squares, and also they're all named sequentially using the Automator software on Mac. Simply drop your files and then search for the rename process, enable the sequential option, enter a title, and you're set. There's also a couple of renamer software available on PC. What matters the most is for these images to be perfect squares or rectangles, but in this case we want them to be square. It's also crucial that they're all named sequentially in order to be able to import them as an image sequence. So make sure that this option here is activated. Import sequence. No need to import them in alphabetic order in this case. We'll make sure it's set to import as footage and click OK. Now that we've done that, we've got the little sequence icon here telling us that it isn't a single image but in fact an image sequence. If we double click on it and hit play, we'll see a different image on each frame. The default frame rate of imported sequences is set to 25 or 30. To change that, we must right click on the element in the project panel, interpret footage, main, and we want to set that to 1 frame per second. That's really important because of the way the project is built. Click OK. Next, let's get into insert sequence here. Simply drop the sequence element in the timeline. Now we'll have all our covers cycling to the rate of once per second. Let's get back in cover flow, and we can see that we now have 1 cover. How can we have them all displayed, you're asking? Well, that's pretty simple. Let's click on the cover composition and simply get under Edit, Duplicate, Command D or Control D on PC. So let's do it 1, 2, 3, 4. Do it until you have lots of them. I now have 19 of them, so let's duplicate it some more, depending on how many elements you want to be displayed. In my case, there are approximately 200, so no need to do that much. You'll notice that the cover flow is building. By default, if you hit U on the control layer, there's a few animated keyframes along with an expression. Let me explain that in a few moments. Now, if we hit 0 on the numpad to make a RAM preview, actually the cover flow is automatically animated following a certain frequency rate. Now, the motion blur and depth of field effects are enabled. I'll show you in a moment. As easy as it seems, after only 2 steps we have built a cover flow straight from an image folder. Now, this comp here is set to the same dimensions as the images. If on your side they're either small like this, for example, or bigger like that, simply right-click, transform, fit to comp. That will scale it automatically. All the reflection effects and the way these covers are laid out is controlled by expressions that I've come up with this afternoon. So we've got a myriad of parameters that are accessible. Let me just set the resolution to quarter to get quicker previews. Disable the motion blur, and also right in the camera options, make sure depth of field is set to off for the moment. Let me just zoom in. So right here, adjust to 100%. Okay, so now we have our animated cover flow. Let's get on the control layer. Where are my effects at? Let me get them right under Windows, Effect Controls. Now we've got a couple of parameters that we can tinker with. Position, spacing, depth, reflection, and starting number. I'll quickly explain each one of those. First, the position. Hit U to reveal the keyframes that controls the animation. Let me just delete the expression and also the keyframes. So now everything stays still. Let's bring the position value back to 0. The position property will allow you to advance further in the cover flow animation. You can continue on like this endlessly with an infinite number of images. So that's it for the position. We'll see how to animate that, but I'm pretty sure that you can guess. Either one move all the way or create a small pause on each images. Let me get right to the center. Now with the spacing property, we can adjust the amount of space in between our images. So either you have them real far from each other or you can have them very close together. If you're using the same dimensions I'm using right now, I recommend you put 30 for the spacing or perhaps 26. That's the way I like it best. Next we have the profondeur, the depth. With this we'll be able to influence the spacing on the Z-axis dynamically. It'll affect all the layers we've got. In the case where you have a great amount of thumbs, you'll have to hit C with the camera tool and pull back like so to adjust it correctly. In my case, I'll set this value back to 18. You can have them all flat or any way you like. That's why I made this tweakable. Finally, the reflection. With this property, you'll be able to tweak it, cut it down, enable it, using a value from 0 to 100. At 0, there ain't no reflection at all, and at 100, it's at its maximum. So with 60 or 80, you'll have something that looks normal. And then we've got the starting point. Changing this value will be required if you add in more elements in the composition. So for example, we can see that the index value for our first element is 4. So then we must put in 4 here as the starting point. If we were to add one more, making the fourth one become the fifth, then we would put a value of 5. It is quite important to do that in order to keep all these covers in order. Looking more closely in details at the expression, and you can notice that a lot of stuff in here is related to the index number. This data is crucial to determine the duplication process and to set the right angle on each cover. So you can analyze the expression if you will and try to understand how it works. The fact that I made this using the French version of After Effects might cause some problems with the English version because of the special characters I'm using. Next, let's see how to animate that. So first let's select our control layer and using the position property try to center it down on one of the covers. Enabling the safe zone guides will help us to center it precisely and find the exact value, 62. That's it. It's perfectly centered. Let's activate the stopwatch in the cursor. Hit U to reveal the keyframes. Move forward approximately 1 second. So right there at the 1 second point, let's increase the position value until we've got the second cover right in the center. Right now I am animating it in a way that we have a small pause on each cover. You can do it any way you'd like. I'd just like to show you the loops and the offsets. So 88, make sure that it's right at the center of the composition. Move forward 2 frames and then add another keyframe to add a small pause. Next, let's select them all. Get in the graph editor, make sure we've got them all selected. Click here to adapt the view to our selection, and let's click here on Easy Ease and pull this handle towards the left and this other one about the same distance to the right in order to slow down the movement at the beginning and at the end when going from one to the other. We can exit the graph editor and let's add an expression to all that. If I could only zoom backwards, that would be a good start. So Alt click on the stopwatch on the cursor property. Next, right in the expression text zone, let's select all and then click here right on this arrow icon under property, and here we have loop out. So by default, this expression, we can click here to enable the view of expression in the graph mode. So what it does is it duplicates the movement in between those 2 keyframes in such a way that it gets repeated over and over. That's pretty useful, but if we do that, we'll always get Rihanna coming back to the center of attention. What we want is to increment a value each time in order to get from one cover to another. That's very simple to do. We simply need to change one word in the expression here. Instead of cycle, let's type down offset and then click elsewhere to validate. And now if we get back to the graph mode, we can see that the value increments each time our motion loops. Now if I make a RAM preview to see what we get, we've got a little pause and then it continues on to the next cover using only 2 keyframes, and frankly, that's very convenient. Perhaps we can raise the quality to half, remove the title save guides. You can make it even nicer by enabling the camera's depth of field. With these settings, it'll make our image in front stand out very sharp, and they'll get more blurred the further they get in the distance. If you want to tone it down, you can play around with the aperture property. Also, you can activate the composition motion blur in order to have them blurred according to how fast they move. Let's have a last preview before we go because I love my automatic cover flow setup. And then I'll let you play around with your own images. If you think you've seen it enough, just look at the expressions to see how it works. I hope you enjoyed this short tutorial, which includes project files. It's the first time I include project files along with a tutorial. Don't hesitate to share it all over the internet if you feel like it. I'll be glad if you do. Its purpose is to be shared. So that's it. Keep on having fun with After Effects, and I will see you soon in another After Effects video tutorial.